World's Top 10s presents Top 10 list of evil human experiments. Number 10 is Stanford Prison Experiment. The Stanford Prison Experiment was a psychological study of human responses to captivity and its behavioral effects on both authorities and inmates in prison. The experiment was conducted in 1971 by a team of researchers led by psychologist Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University. Number 9 is the Monster Study. The Monster Study was a stuttering experiment on 22 orphan children in Davenport, Iowa, in 1939 conducted by Wendell Johnson at the University of Iowa. Johnson chose one of his graduate students, Mary Tudor, to conduct the experiment and he supervised her research. The University of Iowa publicly apologized for the Monster Study in 2001. Number 8 is Project 4.1. Project 4.1 was the designation for a medical study conducted by the United States of those residents of the Marshall Islands exposed to radioactive fallout from the March 1, 1954 Castle Bravo nuclear test at Bikini Atoll, which had an unexpectedly large yield. Children began to suffer disproportionately from thyroid cancer, due to exposure to radioiodines, and almost a third of those exposed developed neoplasms by 1974. Number 7 is Project Ultra. Project Ultra, or MK Ultra, was the code name for a CIA mind control research program, run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence, that began in the early 1950s and continued at least through the late 1960s. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all Ultra files destroyed. Pursuant to this order, most CIA documents regarding the project were destroyed, making a full investigation of Ultra virtually impossible. Number 6 is the Aversion Project. South Africa's apartheid army forced white lesbian and gay soldiers to undergo sex change operations in the 1970s and the 1980s, and submitted many to chemical castration, electric shock, and other unethical medical experiments. Although the exact number is not known, former apartheid army surgeons estimate that as many as 900 forced sexual reassignment operations may have been performed between 1971 and 1989 at military hospitals, as part of a top-secret program to root out homosexuality from the service. Drive. Aubrey Levin, the head of the study, is now clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry, Forensic Division, at the University of Calgary's Medical School. He is also in private practice, as a member in good standing of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta. Number 5 is North Korean Experimentation. There have been many reports of North Korean human experimentation. These reports show human rights abuses similar to those of Nazi and Japanese human experimentation in World War II. These allegations of human rights abuses are denied by the North Korean government, who claim that all prisoners in North Korea are humanely treated. One former North Korean woman prisoner tells how 50 healthy women prisoners were selected and given poisoned cabbage leaves, which all the women had to eat despite cries of distress from those who had already eaten. All 50 were dead after 20 minutes of vomiting blood and anal bleeding. Refusing to eat would have meant reprisals against them and their families. Number 4 is Poison Laboratory of the Soviets. The Poison Laboratory of the Soviet Secret Services, also known as Laboratory 1, Laboratory 12, and the Chamber, was a covert poison research and development facility of the Soviet secret police agencies. The Soviets tested a number of deadly poisons on prisoners from the Gulag, enemies of the people, including mustard gas, ricin, digitoxin, and many others. The goal of the experiments was to find a tasteless, odorless chemical that could not be detected post-mortem. Candidate poisons were given to the victims, with a meal or drink, as medication. In addition to human experimentation, Marinovsky personally executed people with poisons, under the supervision of Pavel Syudoplatov. Number 3 is the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male was a clinical study, conducted between 1932 and 1972 in Tuskegee, Alabama, in which 399, plus 201 control group without syphilis. Poor and mostly illiterate African American sharecroppers were denied treatment for syphilis. By the end of the study, only 74 of the test subjects were still alive. 28 of the men had died directly of syphilis, 100 were dead of related complications, 40 of their wives had been infected, and 19 of their children had been born with congenital syphilis. Number 2 is Unit 731. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that undertook lethal human experimentation during the Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937–1945, and World War II. It was responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes carried out by Japanese personnel. Having been granted immunity by the American occupation authorities at the end of the war, Ishii never spent any time in jail for his crimes and died at the age of 67 of throat cancer. Number 1 is Nazi experiments. Nazi human experimentation was medical experimentation on large numbers of people by the German Nazi regime in its concentration camps during World War II. At Auschwitz, under the direction of Dr. Edward Wirths, selected inmates were subjected to various experiments which were supposedly designed to help German military personnel in combat situations, to aid in the recovery of military personnel that had been injured, and to advance the racial ideology backed by the Third Reich. From about July 1942 to about September 1943, experiments to investigate the effectiveness of sulfonamide, a synthetic antimicrobial agent, were conducted at Ravensbrück.